So, over this weekend, I participated in what's known as the Global Game Jam. And if you don't know what a game jam is an event where basically a whole bunch of game developers gather at different sites across the world for the Global Game Jam at least. And they basically just meet each other or throw teams together on the spot, usually. Sometimes they'll make their own teams beforehand. But usually it's people you have no idea who they are before the event starts. And you just throw a game together within a certain time period. The Global Game Jam is actually 48 hours, so it's the entire span of a weekend. And you're just constantly trying to fix every single bug in whatever game that you could think of in just 48 hours. Pretty much what I did is just spent pretty much every second working on the game, aside from getting maybe like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and then taking a light rail after taking a bus all the way to Seattle, which is like an hour ride from me. Working on the game, coming back after maybe, I don't know, around 20 hours of working, and then falling asleep for the rest of the time, going back there, doing it all over again. And it was great, actually. Basically, the theme of the game jam was waves. So you basically have to, you don't have to, actually, but you make a game that's based off of the theme. This year is waves. What our team did is we made a game where you basically change your color, and depending on your color, you're invulnerable to certain enemies. So if there's a red laser and you're red, then you're invulnerable to that. And so we were kind of working with the waves of the light spectrum in that way. And also we incorporated brainwaves in there too, although that was like midway through. At this point we were just like, hey, let's add more wave stuff to it. Okay, let's do that. Our writer was actually thinking of that, which is pretty neat. And yeah, so we came up with a game that's only a little buggy, but that's the best that you could hope for at a game jam. And yeah, it was awesome. Another interesting thing that we're thinking of is the actual lore to the story is there's these things called diversifiers, and what they are is they're almost like optional challenges on top of the theme for the game. So things like spoken word, where you can't actually type out anything, like any rules to the player. It has to be in the game using audio to tell the story. Things like that. And one of the diversifiers this year was a local legend. And I guess there's a legend around here that somebody went up to Mount Everest and was abducted by aliens or something like that. And our writer, she had heard that story and she was telling us about it. So we were thinking, hey, how about we have it to our mad scientist? I don't know why we picked scientists, but she goes up to Mount Rainier on a hike, and then she gets abducted by aliens who want to harvest her brain, and I guess they succeeded partially, at the very least, because they're collecting these brains that actually give you the colors to basically access that spectrum of brain waves, and that's how you actually fight off that color of brainwaves. I guess you emit those brainwaves which cancel out the lasers brainwaves or the enemy's brainwaves or whatever brainwaves they are. But another idea was that we had the thought that instead of like brain things changing brainwaves, you change your color by just wearing a flannel jacket, and you just rip off the jacket, and then there's just another one underneath that's a different color, and you just have an infinite amount of flannel jackets underneath the next, which was a pretty funny idea. The process of coming up with this game was really fun. We were just kind of sort of throwing out random ideas in some ways. It was still on topic, of course, but I don't know, we were just kind of like being silly with everything still, while still being serious, of course. At one point, our game was... we started off with one of the ideas being a mermaid kind of going down into the sea, and you'd see different colored fish, and as you go down deeper and deeper, get access to less colors or something like that. So we had mermaids in there, but later we got into the topic of communists somehow, and our team name became Mermaid Communists. I don't even know where that came from exactly, but it was pretty great. Eventually our team name changed to Dadfish LLC, and I think that's a reference to Octodad, and I have no idea why we were referencing that, if that's the case, but yeah, so we're Dadfish LLC. Our game is called Spektrum with a K. You could check it out by going to globalgamejam.org and searching Spektrum. I'll probably put a link somewhere too. Our team was 8 people total, including myself. None of them I had ever met before the Game Jam, and they're actually all pretty great people. And on top of that, I met a whole bunch of other developers as well. There are about maybe 50 or so people at the Game Jam total, give or take maybe a dozen. I'm not good at counting, even though I'm a programmer. But yeah, everyone there was actually really awesome. And our team, I think we hit it off pretty well. We were able to bounce ideas off of each other, laughing a lot. Pretty good team, actually, I feel. And because I mean we're all gamers, so that's a pretty good thing. Over this weekend, which actually was my birthday weekend, sort of. My birthday was last Monday, and the Game Jam ended on Sunday. And I spent the days leading up to my birthday just getting 8 hours of sleep total, working on the game for 40 hours total, eating really bad food, although that's normal for me. In fact, even at the end, the event organizer, he actually came up with a list of how much food everyone at the Game Jam consumed. And it was like dozens of pizzas, dozens of chicken orders, of donuts, just anything you can imagine. And probably half of it was just me picking out the whole time. Yeah, it was really great, and they host a Game Jam every single year. Pretty much everybody's able to join if you have any sort of interest in video games. Lots of these people actually have no clue how to make games, or they have a little bit of a clue, like they've used tools before, but they learn a totally new game engine. In fact, just in our team, we had our writer making levels, and she had never done that before, which was interesting. Some of our artists were making levels as well, programmers making. None of us were actually level designers, and it's not too hard of a hat to wear as a level designer, but it was pretty interesting. I would totally recommend anybody who's even slightly interested in game development to try attending one of these, actually, even if you're just doing something as little as playtesting or just fiddling around with small stuff, because even if you don't know much, if you're spending all your time actually putting in an effort, you can actually learn a lot at one of these just by even asking questions to somebody. That's what one of the teams did at the Game Jam, actually. He didn't really know how to use Unity, so he was just constantly asking another team member how to use it. And he actually made a decent game, actually. It was a physics simulation of basically controlling, what you guessed it, waves to kind of push a ship along. There wasn't too much actual gameplay, but I mean, not too many game jams have a whole lot of gameplay to begin with. And for somebody who hadn't really done game development at all, that was pretty impressive, actually. Another game that got made is, I forget who it was, I think his name was Tom something. He came to the Game Jam with the idea that he wanted to make an arcade game, like an actual arcade machine with the cabinet and everything, because I guess he had access to a workshop of some sort. So he came there with the idea to make an arcade cabinet, and what they came up with after they heard the wave idea is an actual surfing game where you stand on a wooden board and you actually control the player by moving that board up and down by standing on top of it as if it's an actual surfboard, which probably isn't very close to actually surfing, but just the thought that somebody could have nothing and make a game like that without even thinking about making a surfing game to begin with in the span of a weekend. Another team, they had a HTC Vive and they were gonna make a VR game, and what they came up with was basically a giant robot simulator type thing with like wavy arms, kind of like Bender. I think that was the only correlation to Waves. But the interesting thing that they did is they had the normal customer HTC Vive model, and they wanted to track the feet. So what they did is they took a couple of DK1 Vive controllers, which is the only way you could actually sync up 4 controllers to a Vive, and they just strapped it onto their legs, and then what do you know? They could control their legs in the game. And that was another interesting fix that somebody came up with in 48 hours and implemented. And it was a pretty cool game, actually. We didn't get to see it because VR is kind of hard to demonstrate in a event like that. But it was still really awesome, and I'm glad that I went. I would definitely recommend going to the Game Jam. I'm planning on going to every single event that I could actually find that's like that, as far as actually like going out and meeting developers, because you get connected at these things, and there's lots of cool people in this community. There's lots of great programmers that you can meet if you're interested in programming, artists, sound engineers, just whatever you're interested in. Even if you're only slightly interested, like let's say you're, I don't know, even a musician who just likes video games. Maybe you could just make some songs for video games just by recording stuff. And even that's enough to participate in a game jam for. If you just like playing games and you like to kind of pick apart what would make a game better, you could be a playtester. I mean, the possibilities are endless. If you're somewhat interested in games, then I'd recommend going to a game jam. Yeah, so Spektrum is a game. Go check it out, and I'll see you guys next time.